Blessings, beloveds. Blessings, lovers of love, and blessings to those who love astrology, as I do. Today I'm going to go into what I guess can call part 2 of relationships and astrology. However, there will be part 3, part 4, part 5, and whatever the case. We'll just see how it flows. There is much to share, much to talk about, much to explore, much to understand. So I'm going to continue using Michael Jackson's chart as a way of example, and in spending the last sort of hour or so, I was just looking at Lisa Marie Presley's chart. So what I'm going to do, not this video, next video, I will look at their relationship astrology. That is Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley. There are many connections there, and I can see why the two of them did actually come together this lifetime. And it's quite fascinating, because when you are looking at two people and the connections that are seen astrologically through their chart, one thing to be looking at is how many connections are there, and what I mean by that is how many points are connecting together. So is that person's moon connecting to that person's sun, or is that person's Venus connecting to that person's descendant, and so on, etc., etc. So if you have two individuals where there's about a minimum of at least 12 points triggered in each other's charts, that's usually quite telling of a really important, profound, powerful connection between the two people. So the more hits they have, the more energy that's basically being shared between the two people. It's like anything in life. If you approach somebody and you're not sort of feeling the vibe or feeling the energy from that person, as we say, you're not going to be inclined to hang around, chat to them, engage with them, whatever. Well, it's the same kind of thing in the world of relationships. When you're looking at astrological birth charts, in order for the two people to come together and connect, there has to be the dance of the stars and the planets between the two people. They have to be coming together in some way, shape or form. Now, there's in the way that they come together, in terms of astrologically speaking, there's something called aspects. So the world of aspects is simply this: it's the distance between two bodies, any two bodies. So when I say bodies, I'm referring to the heavens, the astronomical bodies. Okay, so the distance between one planet to another, for example, forms what's called an aspect. And that aspect, or that distance, or that relationship between those two planets can be what's called a flowing energy, an aspect, or it can be quite a resistant and challenging aspect. Either way, when we're looking at what I've just been describing about having as many possible connections as you can between two people, in the case of that, it doesn't matter whether it's a flowing aspect or whether it's a challenging aspect. We just merely want these points and connections to be seen between the two people, because that shows us the underlay and basic foundation of what's holding this relationship and these two people in this experience together. Okay? I do have a flu, so I'm sorry if my voice gets a bit funny or I cough or whatever the case. I haven't been very well the last few days. Okay, so just going back to some basics again. Now, we talked about the ascendant, which is the first house in an astrological birth chart. So the first house is me. It's how I see the world, the glasses that I choose to look through when I perceive reality, my reality. it's also the house that sits opposite the seventh house, which is the house of relationships. So the first house and the seventh house are in polarity, which all houses are opposite each other. I'll talk about that a bit later. But the first house and seventh house really describe the relationship axis of self to the other. So ascendant is me, self, and the seventh house is the other person, more specifically a relationship. Not just intimate relationships, it can be a business relationship, a relationship that you have with your therapist, a relationship that you have with your healer, any kind of relationship where it involves two people coming together and relating and engaging and developing something through that. Well, that's the seventh house. Now, that brings me to a very important point. In medieval astrology, which I did study medieval astrology many, many years ago from the wonderful Bernadette Brady, I still utilize some of the thinking that derives from medieval astrology, particularly when it comes to looking at the houses in the birth chart, and looking at the rulers of the houses from the form of what's called triplicity rulers. Now, this is a little bit technical for some people who are not, who haven't really studied astrology and are just more wanting the what can I call it, the more basic sort of stuff in terms of, oh, what's my Venus in and what does that mean? And I can get to all of that, but just try and be patient, because everything I'm bringing to this has meaning, is important, and is very much connected. So this is my little card, my little index card. I don't know if you can see it. There you go. Triplicity rulers. Now, the triplicity rulers that I use are the Dorotheus ones, which are the Greek ones. So what this index card does is it shows me a planetary ruler, a primary triplicity planetary ruler, when I'm looking at a particular house. So in Michael Jackson's case, if you can remember his chart, so seventh house. See my crystal? How cool is that? So that's the seventh house, okay? And we mentioned that Michael has Saturn in the seventh house. This is with the time that I'm using, okay? I appreciate that other people might be using a different time. It doesn't matter. This is the time I'm using, okay? So, now, just a moment, because I've just got a blank spot. Let me think. I need my notes, people. Just bear with me. Okay. So in medieval astrology, when we're looking at the seventh house, now in modern, what we could call, I suppose, modern astrology, the seventh house is, like I said, it's personal, intimate relationships, business relationships, relationships that you might have with your therapist, healers, etc. Okay. Now, in medieval astrology, the houses are broken up into 3 levels, and the seventh house is connected to very 3 distinct experiences or elements of life. The first one is intimate relationships. The second one is where we may experience conflict in our life. And the third one is very much connected to partnerships, business partnerships, associations, things of that nature. Now, the ruler of Michael Jackson's seventh house, the first, so there's his seventh house. Sagittarius is on the descendant, okay? So what we need to look at is he was born during the night. So we're looking at a night birth. It's a fire sign. The the first ruler, which according to this medieval method, the first triplicity ruler of the 7th house is connected to one's intimate relationships. So if Michael is a night birth, and it's fire on their descendant because it's Sagittarius there, so the ruler is Jupiter. Why am I surprised at that? I seem surprised, don't I? I think I am. There was something else. I think I was looking at his 12th house. Anyway, we'll leave that aside. But I guess what I'm trying to draw your attention to is that there are many levels and layers to what's called delineating. So understanding a birth chart, in this case, relationships. Some other things that we haven't talked about, which are really, so just backtracking, ascendant, descendant, Mars, Venus, and by the way, when we're looking at Mars and Venus in our own horoscope chart, or in a what's called a composite chart or a synastry chart, which is when we're looking at a couple's relationship chart. So a couple's relationship chart is called a composite chart or a synastry chart. They're two very distinctive methods to produce results, if you like, if you use that word. However, when we're looking at just thinking about Venus for a moment, now I really love this. This is the most beautiful one-liner, I think, of describing what Venus represents, and this is it: vibrational magnetism of attraction. That's Venus. That's what she does. Now, Venus has two functions in terms of an internal function and an external function. The internal function of Venus is very much about how we listen, believe it or not, how we hear. So whatever sign your Venus is in, that's going to be very telling about what you're hearing in your own head about your own self. And a lot of that's got to do, it's connected to self-worth, because if you think about Venus, Venus rules Taurus and Libra, okay? So the Taurus aspect of Venus is very much about our worth, our value, things that we do value in life and we value about ourselves. It's about the ability to be self-reliant, to be self-empowered, self-actualizing, and so forth. So that's one aspect of Venus ruling Taurus. I'm just trying to describe to you that the function of Venus in our own chart, despite what sign she is in, she has this underlying story to what she brings into our life, despite what sign she is in your own chart. So there's two faces of her: the internal, which I've just described, and the external, which is the side of Venus where she projects onto the other. That's the 7th house, which brings in Libra. That's why Venus rules Libra. Okay, so and I just want to add to that as well that when you're looking at Venus, for instance, I've got Venus in Pisces. That's very, very telling for me. It describes my life, really, so clearly, so clearly. You know, even if I just didn't know anything else and I just read Venus in Pisces, I would be blown away because of the accuracy and meaning that it actually brings to understanding the feminine principle, the primary feminine principle and quality within me, and how that operates and how I experience that and how I share that. So what ideals I have about that as well, perhaps what expectations I have, and so forth. And that is the case with all of us. Now, the other thing that we need to remember as well is when we're looking at Venus, we're looking at the polarity point, okay? So I've got Venus in Pisces. The polarity point of Venus in Pisces is Venus in Virgo, because Virgo sits opposite Pisces in the zodiac, okay? So there's this experience of polarity is everywhere. Night, day, yin, yang, Virgo, Pisces, boy, girl, etc., etc. We live in a world of polarities, okay? So we must be able to understand a polarity point when it is presented. And what does that mean for you? What is it trying to bring to your attention? What is it that you need to learn and understand and integrate or transform, for that matter, as well? Which I guess then leads me to my next point, which is when we're looking at the world of relationships particularly, we really need to bring Pluto into the picture. Okay, so Pluto is an outer planet. It has it moves very, very slowly. In fact, it takes 248 years to do a complete lap around. So it's the slowest moving planet. It's been called a dwarf planet and all sorts of rubbish, and I don't really pay attention to that because what actually is important is, what does Pluto represent? What does it bring to your life? And what does it bring to the world of relationships in your own life? And Pluto basically brings the biggest karmic, most transformative experiences that you will encounter in your life. So Pluto is your soul's evolutionary journey. That's what Pluto is. So how could you ever discount the meaning of Pluto? You can't. Simply can't. Now, when you're looking at a composite chart for two people, which is, say, for example, Michael Jackson, Lisa Marie Priestley, I make a composite chart, which means their charts become one chart. Okay? So that one chart is the relationship chart of Michael and Lisa. Okay? Now, in that chart, I'd be looking to see, where is Pluto located? The composite Pluto, as we would call it. Now, it's a very powerful thing to be looking at, because Pluto will show you the soul's evolutionary process and journey of these two individuals in the world of relationships. So, the composite Pluto, wherever it's located, it will show you what the individuals have brought in from a previous lifetime together. So what energies they've brought in and now remains dormant and unconscious, if you like. That doesn't necessarily stay that way, but that's at least how it begins. So the Pluto will describe what they've brought in from the past life, including strengths, weaknesses, all sorts of stuff. And the polarity point of Pluto will describe what it is that these two people are now needing to continue to actually work on in order for the relationship to continue to evolve on a soul level and journey. So it's pretty powerful stuff, right? And I will look at that when I actually draw a composite chart between Michael and Lisa, and we'll see where Pluto is for them. Just wanted to say something about looking at Venus, Venus retrograde in the birth chart. So Venus only goes retrograde every 542 days. So it's not that often. So when it happens, it's pretty significant, I think. It's really saying something about the Venusian function, the Venus function, the Venus principle, the Venus energy, the goddess, female, feminine energy, whatever you want to call it, is turned within and stays activated within. Remember I said earlier that Venus has two ways of operating, an internal way and an external way. Now, when Venus is retrograde, she's internalized completely. And what that means is for that individual, if they're born with Venus retrograde, it's like they've got a buffer activated, which really stops people from being able to delve deep into that person. So it's a bit of a tricky, complex dynamic, if you like, psychologically, because when you think about it, Venus, most of its main desires and attributes and characteristics are related to sharing. Venus is the sharing principle. So how do I share what I love? How do I share what I value? How do I share what I really appreciate? How do I connect with another person on that level with regards to shared values and morals and beliefs and things like that? Shared heart space, all of that. That's Venus. That's the sharing principle and function. And it's how we want to be loved, appreciated and understood and so forth. So if it is all those things and many other things that I haven't mentioned, and in retrograde motion there's only an internal process activated, can you imagine the complexity of what that brings up for somebody? So that's another thing. And Venus, when Venus goes retrograde via transit, which people often, make reference to. Oh, Venus has gone retrograde and Mercury has gone retrograde. Look out! Look, I have to be honest. When Mercury goes retrograde, I have noticed on many occasions it really messes things up. Just the other day, I had a significant amount of money stolen out of my bank account. Anyway, that's another story. But that's whilst Mercury's been retrograde, and I opened an email that I shouldn't have opened, and I didn't read it properly. That's a strong indicator of when Mercury is retrograde, we for some reason are not, our perception from the mercurial perspective, the mental sphere, doesn't have the same ability to see things as they are presented. Okay, so there's always a lot of confusion, misinterpretation, misunderstanding, bunch of cross lines all over the shop, which is why I just posted something the other day saying, look, when Mercury is retrograde, it is good to pay attention to this stuff, because these things do happen. It's not imaginary. They do actually happen. So going back to Venus retrograde, well, when Venus is retrograde, which is, as I said, once every 542 days, depending on whether you're in a relationship or not, she will bring up some past patterns, past behaviors that perhaps need to be revisited because they haven't been worked through or whatever. Look, the thing is this, if we haven't transformed through something, we haven't worked through it, it will manifest again, it will appear. Doesn't matter how much we try and hide it, shove it in down there somewhere, whatever. When we haven't worked through something, the soul will continuously present situations energetically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and so forth, to give us that opportunity to actually work through what it is we need to work and grow through on a soul evolutionary level. So when Venus is retrograde in the heavens, when she's transiting and she appears to go retrograde, you need to look at where that is in your birth chart for the time that she is retrograde, for instance. So if she was transiting your 8th house, well, that might mean that she might bring up some old fears and past emotional struggles, fears, um, that have been very inhibiting for you, let's say. So it's time to free yourself up from that kind of limitation, let's say. So she'll be transiting in the 8th house for a while. She'll if you're in a relationship, she'll bring up some old emotional residue that's still within you that will be projected onto the relationship or the partner. So, it might be a time where a couple says, oh, we've just been through a really weird phase in our relationship. My partner was XYZ and couldn't really quite understand it and blah, blah, blah. Well, those sorts of scenarios, those sorts of experiences and growth spurts and challenges and unexpected things that appear in relationships are all connected to the movements of the bodies, the stars, the planets, all of that. So everything that's moving, as I've said before, because nothing is static, is creating a pattern, an energy, and it is triggering off, hitting off things in our own birth chart. Always. There's always something going on. Okay, so I think I have covered more or less what I wanted to touch on today, which was just to recap, to bring to people's attention the primary function of Venus. As I said earlier, vibrational magnetism of attraction. I love that. I could say that over and over and over. There's something about that. Because Venus is the principle of attraction. So whatever sign your Venus is in, ladies, that is going to be your style, your way of attracting what you want in your life. And that's not just men, if you're straight and into men, because you could be gay and into women, but doesn't matter. What matters is your Venus describes how you attract and draw in to your life the things that you want, the things that you love, the things that you appreciate, the things that you enjoy. So a good Venus goes a really long way. A good Venus has the ability to attract and draw in to her life what she wishes to enjoy and experience and share and connect with. So obviously a difficult Venus is not going to be able to so easily draw and attract the things that she wants into her life. And there is a reason why, people have a difficult Venus or a difficult Mars. I've got a very difficult Mars. I'll talk about that some other time perhaps. But, we all have our challenges. So I'll leave it there for today. And I think my next video, I'm going to bring the chart in of Michael and Lisa, and I'm going to look at their composite chart, their synastry chart, just to demonstrate to you the importance of the connections and links between planet to planet or planet to angle in the chart, and something else called midpoints as well, which is not often talked about, but I do look at midpoints. They're very important in your own chart as well. You could have an important planet at the moment transiting a midpoint which you can't see with the naked eye, which as a result you completely overlook and could turn out to be a really important thing to know, you're just not aware of it. So there's many layers, many levels, which is why I said when I do part 2, it's because there's a lot to share and a lot to talk about. So yeah, ascendant, descendant, Mars, Venus, Pluto, particularly in the composite chart, and as I mentioned in the previous video, the 4 goddesses, Pallas, Juno, Vesta, and Ceres. They're really important, the 4 feminine goddesses to look at in a chart as well when you're wanting to understand more about that feminine principle and energy. And one thing that I didn't talk about today, but perhaps I'll bring that in next time as well, is Lilith, the goddess Lilith. or the Black Moon Lilith. Now, she's a really important function in the birth chart. She shows a lot about the woman's feminine power. So I'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this, and please feel free to comment, ask any questions, and for now I bid you blessings. Bye.